Hey everybody, thanks for attending our panel on design and visualization in XR. We're really glad that you attended, and I want to promise you, after meeting these folks, we're going to have a very lively and informative discussion. We want you to go away from this having a great volume of information that you can take back to your own company and perhaps implement some of the things that you're going to hear today. But before we start talking, why don't we get, I've met these folks, but I want you to meet these folks. So I'm going to have each one of them give you a short biography and their background and their company. So let's start with Megan. Want to get us out of the gate here, Megan?
Sure thing. Hi, I'm Megan Lubaszka, and I'm a regional creative media at Gensler. I work out of the Los Angeles office, but we're actually the world's largest architecture firm, and we have offices all over the globe, 50 locations. Though now with COVID, I guess we're in 5,000 individual locations with everyone working from home. And so part of my role is all about how do we bring virtual reality and augmented reality into the daily flow of the architect? How is this a tool that becomes something that becomes as part of your day as, checking your email? And so it's been a really exciting journey since about 2014 of democratizing this technology and programming some apps and things like that to get everyone excited about it.
Good, thanks. So we have architecture representative. Glenn, it's good to see you here today. Give us some background of yourself.
Yes, so I'm Glen Hall. I'm a computer engineer by education. I am at Toyota North America at the R&D facility in Michigan. I'm primarily responsible for supporting the autonomous vehicle development program. But in addition to that, I'm responsible for augmented reality and virtual reality as a solution.
Very cool. All right, architecture, automotive. Ricardo, it's good to see you.
Likewise.
Background on yourself.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Ricardo Rodriguez. I also with a background originally in architecture, but I work for manufacturer MBCC, formerly BASF. We're now a standalone unit or company as of a little bit ago. And my role is that of a global virtual design and construction specialist. And what that really means is that I assess and identify emerging technology around the world and then connect that with both of our products and then our customers, which happen to be architects, engineers, general contractors, installers, and owners.
All right. So there's construction. And Stephen, that leaves you.
Hi, my name is Stephen Paul. I'm the Director of Visualization and Immersive Technology for AECOM, Design Construction Services in the Americas. And we're a big company. Last I heard, we were between 80 and 100,000 people globally. We've got, as Megan pointed out, we've got about 1 million offices now. We do a lot of, our company does a lot of everything. Architecture, infrastructure, project management, just a whole bunch of stuff. We're part of, I run the visualization studio, the Viz studio, we call it. And it's a part of marketing and communications for the Americas here. And as such, we focus on communicating ideas. We communicate ideas visually. We started off when I joined AECOM about 6 years ago. The visualization studio was very much about traditional architectural visualization, and not just of architecture, but infrastructure as well. Roadways, subways, dams, bridges, waterworks, the whole thing. We still do all of that. But instead of just doing renderings and animations, which continue to be our bread and butter, live action videos, we've added web design. But I came into the group as director with the overt intention of bringing more interactivity and engagement, viewer engagement to our visualization services here. And I've been working with, or kind of working on the periphery anyway, of XR, of virtual reality, especially for well, since the 90s. So however long that's been. And
Hey,
with,
Steve, you're kind of jumping ahead to my first
oh,
question.
I'm sorry.
Maybe
I'll back up then and just say, yeah, my background is esoteric. I'll say that. And I'll
Yeah,
get into that later if you
yeah.
want.
Steve does have a really interesting background in it, and I think we'll touch on that on a question I was thinking of this morning of that I haven't even sprung on you guys. So be ready. But so we're talking about design and visualization. We've been in that business for decades. It hasn't been XR. Which I'm going to use the term XR in our panel today. I know there's AR, VR, XR, MR, add your own R, but we'll use XR for today. Okay, we've been in design and visualization for decades. Like I said, whatever the platform might have been. What does XR bring to the table that's new, unprecedented, and better? Ricardo, I'm going to start with you on that one.
Sure. Yeah, sharing a little bit of a background with Megan and Steven. I actually, by the way, Megan, when I moved to DC, I did work for Gensler for some time. So
Nice.
I'm familiar with the family. Yeah, I think the initial necessary standpoint has always been visualization, because I think that's something that's very tied to how our human brain operates. But going a little bit in the direction of what Steven was saying, for us, the way we're increasingly seeing XR as a mirror of technologies, it's in its abilities to be interactive and to be used as tools rather than just as visualization pieces. With that, we also have to come to this realization that for things to be interactive, people have to get an end use out of them that is not only user friendly, but that provides value, right? And a lot of the focus that we've done recently is, especially on the remote training or remote showcase type of standpoints, is on increasing not only the interactivity, but also the interconnectivity of the XR technology that you're choosing with a myriad of other platforms that your end user might be exposed to and needing to access. So in general, I think in our definition of XR, there is that interactivity and interconnectivity portion of it.
So
And we're doing other cool stuff with it too, but yeah, I would say that's in general.
So you're engaging the users more than in the past.
Yeah, and allowing them to extract information other than visual from the experiences themselves.
Wow, good. Well, that's a plus. I'm a big UX guy, and anytime you can include the audience more, that's thumbs up from me. Glenn, at Toyota, are you seeing some improvements or in efficiencies and costs, that kind of thing?
Yeah, good question, Scott. So I think it's like three main areas I'll cover in this one. So first, I would say reduction in lead time. So traditionally, so first off, what we do at R&D is we build prototype vehicles, right? So building these vehicles, we don't have a large plant with parts just laying around. We have to order these parts right before we build them. So a lot of times during the evaluation process, the engineers there's a lot of lag time in the time that it takes these parts to get in. So there's a lot of waiting. The engineers are ready to evaluate, but have to wait on that. So what we're doing is to shorten that lead time. We are presenting these evaluation products in AR or VR. So that's one thing, just reducing the lead time in terms of evaluating a specific area. Another thing is cost reduction in terms of building prototype parts. AR, VR allows us in some scenarios to evaluate parts without building prototype vehicles at all, right? So some of these vehicles that we're building are over $1 million a piece, so they're extremely expensive, right? As you know, a Camry doesn't cost that much off the line, right? It's a lot cheaper than that. And also build quality. Traditionally, as a company, what we've done is, from an engineering perspective, we actually borrow plant members. We don't have members at R&D who are dedicated to building these vehicles. So what we'll do, the process is we'll call up these different plants. We'll basically have we'll send out a survey to see who would like to volunteer to build these vehicles. So when they get here, they may be used to building a Tundra, but we want you to build a Corolla, or we may want you to build a vehicle that doesn't have a steering wheel, you know, so we're building all kind of things. And with that tradition, like I said, get back to the traditional part is in the past, we've only had 2D drawings, right? These very complex engineering 2D drawings, because we're so early in the design phase that we don't have this detailed description as to how to assemble these vehicles. So it's a lot of engineering time, a lot of support from engineers on how to assemble these vehicles properly. And the training isn't as good as it should be. So there have been some issues in the build quality. So what we're doing is, instead of engineers having to spend all this time directing users on how to assemble the parts, we're providing training in AR, right? So in AR, we're providing 3D step-by-step, very easy to understand instructions based on those three-dimensional drawings to improve build quality.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. That sounds very cool. I'd love to see that. Megan, how about you? I mean, in architecture, you're building whole new ideas to show to your clients. How is XR helping you?
Well, I would agree with Glenn in that we are getting huge efficiencies with teams. Before, when I think of, you know, if I was going to join a project, architecture projects take many years to design, and then they'll be built many years later. So the team, it's always churning. There's always someone new coming on. And I remember when I first started out, you know, we were using MicroStation to draw these 2D plans. I might have to draw some escalators at a department store, or, you know, something more complex like part of a Smurf building at a theme park. And I remember it used to take me 2 weeks or so before I really realized what I was drawing, you know, like where it fit in with the rest of the building and all of that. And I think one of the most amazing things is now you can just borrow the designer's head, you know, the concept designer who has this vision for it. We have these early virtual reality models, and right away you can see, okay, this is what the project is. And it saves a lot of time too with things like quality assurance. Whereas before, we still do go over every sheet that's produced, and that goes into what I guess most people would think of as a blueprint to a contractor. But at the same time, now we're able to just do a quick walkthrough and see, oh, wow, you know, we might not have noticed that side of a ceiling before. And it's also really helping in this era of, I think the one word that you can use to describe the construction process these days is acceleration. Everything is so fast with schedules. And so we're able to get our clients and our stakeholders to just buy in more quickly to things. If we're trying to get something approved as a permit, before you might have to spend several weeks, you know, with the city planning department trying to explain what your idea is. But now you can bring in a portable headset. Everyone can see, oh, okay, this isn't going to be blocking my backyard, your new design. We can get behind this. So lots of huge improvements, and just I feel like a total transformation from how we used to work before, when we were limited to using these 2D drawings to describe this 3D experience.
Very cool. So seeing lots of improvements in cost, efficiencies, that sort of thing. And I am going to say that one term I didn't think I'd hear today in the panel was Smurf Park. So thanks for sharing that. Steve, I looked at AECOM.com and the kind of stuff that you guys do, and it was mind-blowing. You have to, not unlike our other panelists, but even at a grander scale, because of the kind of projects that you take on, you have to show clients and internal people things that don't exist. Do you have some guidelines or steps that make that an effective experience for the target audience?
Well, you know, I mean, probably the best advice I can give on that point would be to understand your audience. Now, who are you talking to? What is important to them? You know, as you say, we can look at a lot. We do a lot of very big projects that cover, sometimes hundreds of miles, hundreds of square miles, entire metro areas. But what are the important points to them? What are the things that we need to get across about how these projects will actually affect their life? And yeah, at its basic level, it is about showing what is this new wastewater treatment plant going to look like from the elementary school that adjoins it, right? Will they be able to see it? Will it be an eyesore? What will this elevated train look like, on an LRT, as an LRT look like from the bike path here? So there's that, but then there's also this idea of, how do we really understand what their needs are and convey to them the sense that we're working with your best interests at heart. We're working to solve the issues that you have. And as all you guys pointed out, one of the benefits of XR is certainly the ability to see things more clearly, to get the whole picture, basically, as Megan was saying, of the Smurf Park here, right? But in a sense, it's what we've been doing with visualization all along, only this takes it to that extra step. I guess I'll just give one quick example of a plaza. Basically, we were doing an underpass for Interstate 77, I believe it was, in Asheville, North Carolina. I think it was Asheville or Charlotte. There was a plaza that we had to redesign and renovate. This neighborhood is a historic neighborhood. It's facing challenges of gentrification, and that was a huge issue for the residents of that neighborhood. They didn't want it to exclude the people who already live there in favor of those who were just passing through or moving in. So we did virtual reality renderings, 360-degree renderings, very simple sort of stuff. And this was a few years back, so it was fairly crude by today's standards, and passed out Oculus Go headsets, or I'm sorry, it was Gear VR headsets to the people at this community meeting. And we had young kids and senior citizens and everybody in between trying these things on and really looking at what we were planning for them. And that, you could see it as they were doing it. You could see in their reactions, in their responses, that they understood what this park, what this plaza and this redesign was going to mean. It was immediately conveying to them what we had always hoped for all along, that we were building it for them, and they could feel themselves literally in it or virtually in it in that way. So it's a much more effective level of communication, and it does go back to our ideas within the hippocampus of our brain and the neurology of it that convince us this is real. I understand this at a deeper level, on an emotional level and a spatial level.
Right.
So, yeah. Sorry.
Well, that sounds like a former English major and theater guy, which you are.
Yeah.
Because there's a storytelling involved. There really is, within what we do, a story
absolutely.
In all the things that we work on. That's really cool. I want to give the rest of you a chance, maybe, if you'd like, to share a brief use case or case study that you've done, maybe recently, that's really been effective. Like Stephen gave a really specific instance of using VR. Ricardo, do you have one use case that was really powerful to you and you were going, man, this is what XR brings?
Well, yeah, a couple. And actually, for the audience, there's also a lecture that I have, or a presentation in the general event that goes in detail into each of these.
Oh,
so if you're interested, there's videos and everything about it. we initially started out doing the cardboard boxes, the Google Cardboard boxes. I think like pretty much everyone's aware of that because it's very entry level, easy to understand, and very cheap to implement, right? It's very cost effective in that manner. And even at that, I think it provides a means for people to become more aware of what immersive technology is doing. Now, I would say where we really kicked it up a notch is when we actually, and speaking a little bit about the wastewater treatment plant, like Stephen was mentioning, one of the use cases that we studied was basically putting installers within a wastewater treatment plant. And the reason for that is twofold. We found that with the discussion on material performance and building product performance, usually the labor and installers are left out of that equation. And in reality, they're the means of getting these building performance value propositions into buildings and projects themselves. The labor, they're the initial step in that. So it's very important for the people applying our products to understand how they go about it. And we established, we selected a digital twin project that was already ongoing, a wastewater treatment plant in Spain. And these type of, as you can imagine, these type of properties or assets, it's not something you could just take offline and repair them rather easily. There are really serious logistical considerations and an impact on the operations of them when they have downtime. So as a means of training people in the application of a water proofing and concrete repair and grout repair type of products, we basically developed an experience where there's a wastewater treatment plant project where we've overlaid not only a BIM model to it, but also a 360 omni-camera capture to it. So we're really immersed. And then you go through the steps of how to apply these products to the, I would say, to the detail of even selecting the right tool from a toolkit and then applying it on a wall or on a floor. I think when we, back in the old days when we had conventions and booths, we kicked it up a notch by actually providing physical samples of those same type of products. So when someone was applying them, you can actually touch them on the wall, and it kind of reinforced the experience in general. So as you can imagine, once you present that, you have like these executives from every sort of our strategic companies that want to get that into their kind of pipeline and training program. So I think that's was very effective for us.
Yeah, that's incredible. Okay, Glenn, couple things. You can't use an example of a wastewater treatment plant.
Another word you thought you didn't we're going to hear.
But is there a new RAV4 or Forerunner we should know about?
No. Even if there was, I don't know if I can tell you, right? So
a great example within Toyota that you're excited about.
Well, honestly, you said a recent example?
Oh, or just one that really made you excited about using XR.
Well, the latest one we're using is, I'm going to go ahead and throw a company out there. We're working with ICIDO. I don't know if that's okay, but so this will be new to R&D, and basically this is a tool that will allow us to evaluate the assembly process, and it will allow us to focus on things like ergonomics and tool usability. The special thing about this tool is it has the kinematics, which is like physics-based science. So in terms of like, you can evaluate where parts collide, and you can also have parts that you can see how gravity affects these parts, right? So if you have a wire, the wire will actually dangle and move around as gravity is pulling down on it. And also, if you drop a part, it will it'll fall to the ground as if gravity's pulling on it. For me, this is huge because most of the VR tools we've looked at, they don't have these capabilities. And there's actually a trial coming up very soon that we're looking to see if this new ability to look into evaluating tools and considering these kinematic features will be beneficial. So in terms of recent, that's the area that I would bring up.
Very cool. So another training example.
Yeah.
Megan, that leaves you.
So I started out as a retail architect, and retail is in trouble these days with everything that's been going on with the lockdown. So one thing that has always been really exciting for me is when leasing agents who are responsible for, getting all of these smaller tenants to kind of collage together into these mixed use spaces, really get the technology and really get excited about it. And one thing that I feel like is part of my personal mission within commercial real estate is to move beyond this idea of the LOD, which is just, thinking of a space in terms of how much square footage it has, how much this outline of a plan is on a lease, because space is completely three-dimensional, and there's so much beyond just how someone used to be able to get, a fast food chain or a retail store to come into a development. They would be able to go in with a plan and maybe a picture of something. And so we've been able to do some really stunning designs for some of our retail properties and mall repositionings, where we bring in, we totally reimagine for the developer what it might be. Like maybe there'll be a hospital here and a hotel here, and we can add a retail space and we can tear the roof off. And I think the most rewarding ones are when we go into something where it might be an old traditional mall, and then we let our designers kind of go wild for a week or two. A developer might come to us and say, oh, we might need to refresh the restrooms or get some new signage in the garage. And then we'll come up with this amazing scheme, and they'll say, oh my gosh, I finally understand the potential for repositioning this entire property. I'm going to go find a way to get, $100 million, $300 million, partner with someone and completely change this from, an old tired property into what could be a new town center or town square. So we've been fortunate enough to have experiences like that. Whenever a designer can convince their client to go find more money to put into the design, it's kind of the best possible outcome for us, because for us, at the end of the day, it's, are we making a better spatial experience for the community? Are we doing something that's really going to affect the future of how this city interacts with people? And so those have always been, I think, the most exciting ones, where a client will say, oh, okay, you were right about how this should look. I need to find another $1 million to make this happen. It's going to pay for itself in a way I couldn't have seen with just a 2D drawing of why we needed this to be here.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you can do something with the mostly empty malls around our country, that's a big plus. A couple of you have mentioned the pluses about collaboration. Quite honestly, some of the collaborative aspects of VR, for instance, we might have tried spatial or alt-space VR, that sort of thing, can be kind of clunky. Are some of you trying that collaborative work on design and visualization, bringing other people in to kind of look at that prototype or look at that design to work to get together? And what has been your experience on that? Open question.
So when you mentioned spatial, I'll jump on that one, Scott. Good question.
Okay.
So with spatial, we've been collaborating with them and trying to get engineers to collaborate on designs remotely. And I don't know, for people may not know what spatial is though, right? So spatial is a tool that allows users in different areas, wearing different head-mounted displays, to look at a 3-dimensional, a 3D model, right? So this is in, and I think they're agnostic. So I think it could be, what we're using is VR, but I think they're trying to go agnostic. I'm sorry, AR, but I think they're trying to go agnostic with AR and VR eventually. So yeah, so and the technology itself is great, right? I mean, you can see it, the parts, you can see the people in the room, everyone has the ability to kind of manipulate the part, move it around, expand it, contract it. But I will say, Scott, one of the challenges we're facing with that is engineers don't really see the benefit over what they're doing today, right? So the benefit, so, the time and effort that it would take to get the model and decimate it and, import it in, and all the security issues we would have, and, getting buy-in from IS to put this in the cloud. It's just easier to do what they do today, just screen share on a, two-dimensional screen, CAD parts, and collaborate that way. So that's my input.
Okay. So it's some pluses and some challenges for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's a really great way to get people excited about the technology, or to try it for the first time in a group setting, because VR is kind of inherently isolating when you put it on. So one thing we've done at Gensler is something that are called VR jams. So I've hosted over 80 of these. And what we'll do is we'll get a design team to come show, an exciting new project. Like one was the Smurf theme park that we were talking about, where they had constructed these incredible little Smurf villages using Revit. And with one click, we're able to get into virtual reality. We use different solutions like Enscape or Fuser, which will plug into our traditional softwares like Revit, SketchUp, Rhino, and it's really exciting. It's like we're kind of all going in a time machine together to another place. One thing that I think they really need to work on, though, is avatar representation, because that is one thing that will distract people, that uncanny valley of what they look like in VR, rather than what the space is. But for the most part, the software is at a place where it's really comfortable and easy to move around using an Xbox controller. So it's just like, Fortnite or some of these other exciting games where, you can get all together and communicate with each other, whether you're in Tokyo or London, and learn from another team.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah.
We've been working, not to go back to wastewater, but we've been working with a client, HRSD, out in the Chesapeake Bay, Norfolk, Virginia area, and with building a pump station. And it's a pump station that's made to look basically like a 2-story colonial house in a suburban neighborhood. And so it's about 6 stories deep, but most of it is underneath the house there. So it's a very cramped, very tightly configured environment. We probably need Smurfs to work in that environment because it's so cramped. But needless to say, obviously everything has to be very precisely placed. And so we are doing this in VR. We've partnered with Insight VR, which, like a lot of other companies out there, is really pioneering some of the web-based VR meeting, social gathering kind of things. It's really great. It's, we found it to be really successful. Obviously, the experience that the designers and engineers have when they're in there is great, because, obviously what we've all been saying, they can see the relationship, the spatial relationships of everything. But what Insight does is it brings all of the BIM material. It actually partners up with BIM 360, Autodesk BIM 360. So they build all this stuff in Revit, and we can even build stuff in Max and bring it into Revit and vice versa. But if you do it in Revit, it retains all that information. So while they're in VR, they're able to just kind of point their Quest hand controller at an object and bring up all the information with it, and make notes and circle things, and everybody can see each other in there, and that's great. And I think they overcome the avatar uncanny valley issue just by throwing it away. Basically, you're just basically a sphere on a cone, on an ice cream cone, So it's that kind of a thing, and then you've got the little hand controllers there. So everybody is just kind of a green or purple or red or whatever object in the space. But it works really well. Of course, for us in visualization, the downside is that they prioritize, in order to get it to go over the web, effectively and to have that, they prioritize the geometry. So none of the nice finishes, the lighting, all the cool stuff that we like as, at our heart, artists and animators, is gone. It's just kind of the basic model that's there. So I'm hoping that someday when we get better bandwidth, 5G, maybe it'll be a lot more engaging in that way, visually as well as functionally.
Okay, Ricardo, did you want to weigh in on collaboration?
I think we've also experienced this where the more interactive we want to get, the less level of graphic quality we have. But I'll do a bit of a different take on it. Not that we haven't experienced that. I would say we've experienced mostly the same of my fellow panelists. But one thing that we need to think is that potentially through AR, there are other means of collaborating that might not necessarily mean everyone being together at the same time in the same place. And we are piloting a few different alternatives. Some are web or app-based, where we've developed an experience and then we do a slimmer down version that kind of travels across the cloud a little bit better. That's helped our salespeople, I would say, tremendously in at least the areas that we've piloted, because they're able to get to more people that specifically weren't at a particular event. Now, I would say even more effective than that, when we were still under the BASF umbrella, BASF had acquired a minority stake in AR company for remote support called Reflect in Germany. And when we still had access to those toys, it was quite exciting because, as you can imagine, in a plant or manufacturing setting, the ability of you to just bring any of the devices that you have access to in front of a very expensive and complex piece of equipment, and then request support on it and get diagnostic step-by-step on what to do, and you're able to see it. And then there's also someone in your headset kind of explaining and walking you through it. Then that goes directly into tracking or developing a ticket for a maintenance order or warranty, whatever it might be. So it makes that process very much effective. And I think that's a level of collaboration that we increasingly need to think about more so, right, than the normal application, which we're all talking about, right, in general.
Yeah, that remote assistance AR, I think, is one of those low-hanging fruit for XR, just because you can immediately see the cost savings. You're spreading around those SMEs. I could be sitting here in Central Illinois and help somebody repair a machine in, I don't know, Japan, and then in the next half hour help somebody in Hawaii. So just incredible the way that's working.
And that also applies, I would say, to construction in general. There are no practical reasons or limitations why this technology is not being used in construction at the labor and site-related kind of interaction, other than lack of knowledge. It's definitely not for lack of funds, as we've seen with the pandemic. The funds exist once a need is established.
Yeah. Well, guys, listen, believe it or not, we're getting close to the end of our time. We probably have, 5 to 7 minutes left. And I just want to speak to the person sitting out there that's been watching the panel, and hopefully if they had questions or comments, putting it in the stream. But what would you say? They're hearing you talk and you're using different products and companies, and you're doing it and you're getting it done, and it can sound intimidating if they haven't launched something within their own world, within their own company. Could you each take like 60 seconds and give somebody just sort of some inspiration or some just let them know that this is doable, it's accessible, it's attainable, even in these challenging times for them to use within their own worlds?
I'll give it a go. I've been in my current role 2.5 years working, switching from an architect to a global enterprise level has its changes, right, in itself. And a few of the things I've learned is when we talk about these things, even though we might be very interested in them, not everyone understands them at the same level. And in that, I, for one, even though think that the technology has a lot of impact in itself, I wouldn't lead the discussion with the technology. I would lead the discussion on the need or the other problem, because I think that usually finds better ears, right, and more open minds when you really talk about your end users, whoever they might be. And the other thing to consider is a lot of this tech is already available off the shelf. And of course, there are some growing pains in that. But it's not like you need to go up and develop these super expensive simulations like it was a decade or even 5 years ago, right? A lot of these things are very accessible now. So start small, small bites.
Start small. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left. Glenn, what do you have to say?
I'm gonna have to piggyback off of Ricardo. Yeah, so I would think start small. And like he said, these solutions are readily available off the shelf. Personally, all the projects I've worked on, we haven't done any development, personal custom development. We look for tools that we could kind of take out of the box, and they're already ready to go. And there's also a lot of support out there too. There's a lot of good information out there now. Like I think you mentioned earlier, this has been around for like, I don't know, over a decade now. So yeah, that would be the motivational item I would give. Yeah,
that's good to hear. That could be a whole nother panel, is just all the tools that you guys are using. All right, Megan.
I like to tell people, if you can charge your phone, you can plug in a headset. If you can print something, you can get into VR pretty quickly because of these off-the-shelf tools. But even then, if you want to go deeper, back in 2014, when I was first getting into it, when this wave came out with the Oculus and these other consumer headsets, I built my first AR app from watching YouTube videos that some 14-year-old made. So in a weekend, and it was something that then I'd show people, and the reaction was as if they'd seen magic. So the community is really welcoming. If you go on Reddit, if you go on YouTube, we're still in a place where people are more all about trying to help you than to compete with you to get into this. So don't be afraid to use Google and look for it. But most of us have learned that way from teaching ourselves, and it's there for you.
So you got to have some self-drive to get that done. Yeah, that CEO, or that 14-year-old's a CEO of a startup right now.
Probably.
All right, Steve, you kind of get the last word, except for my closing comments. So what words of inspiration do you have?
Well, I'll try and be concise here. Yeah, I agree with everybody. It is getting easier. The technology is getting easier, better, more user-friendly. The need is out there. The need will be out there. We've had a little blip, I feel, with COVID, with the pandemic, because, obviously people aren't able to get together and, share headsets and that sort of a thing. But I think that we're starting to understand when we're working at home like this, when we're doing virtual conferences like this, that there are ways that we can connect as humans, one-to-one, like this, virtually. And that's an opportunity for us to bring in and reintroduce and bring these new technologies, these XR technologies, to people who can benefit most from it. And so I think that there's tremendous opportunity, or there will be more tremendous opportunity out there now, if we keep in mind who we're serving. It doesn't have to be the big full BIM interactive everything, even though that's incredibly easy, certainly for us who are experienced in it. It can be a simple thing, like an AR app that Megan built, or Gear VR, a cardboard thing that Ricardo did, or anything like that. Even simple steps that allow people in, that allow people to experience it and really feel the wonder and the engagement of XR. So I'm optimistic about the coming year.
Yeah. Well, those are good words, and we need optimism these days. And so thank you. And frankly, I've been really encouraged by your comments and the way that you're utilizing this technology to do great things and exciting things and to help make our world better. So here's a virtual high five to all you guys. And I just hope you have a great conference. We'll all be sticking around for the questions and comments. We've been monitoring the questions as the panel has been going along, and we'll be happy to answer anything and everything that we can. So thanks so much for attending to all of you, and have a great rest of the conference.